You're listening to Strange by Nature, your guide to the strange, weird, unbelievable, and improbable wonders of the natural world.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here today. I am Kirk Mona, and I am joined today by Rachel Ginza and Victoria Thompson. We are all professional naturalists who together have scoured the world for weird and wonderful wonders just to please your mammalian brain's desire for novelty. Isn't that nice? Let's do this.
Hi, everyone. I am starting us off this week. Kirk and Rachel, when I say the word orchid, what image springs to mind for you?
Georgia O'Keeffe.
Yeah, well, understanding the origin of the Greek word, I'll just go ahead and say testicle, because that's what the word orchis means.
I did not know that.
I didn't
Wow.
either.
You know that, huh? That's where orchid comes from, and that's it'll
Fun.
change how you forever look at orchids.
Okay,
I
that
was
is not
thinking.
what I thought you were going to come back with.
I was thinking maybe
Oh, I'm sorry. Beautiful flower.
I was
There we
thinking like
go.
the lady slipper or something.
Yeah, makes that lady slipper seem real different, doesn't it?
Just a
Uh-huh.
little.
Uh-huh.
It's not like it's the state flower or anything.
Yep.
Oh, good.
There it is.
Okay. Well, I
Starting
feel
off
like
That's a little bonus fact for today, apparently.
most people, if you say orchid,
And then there's Kirk.
They don't think of testicles? Jeez. I'm way off base. I'm sorry.
yeah, most people think of a beautiful flower, maybe purple or white.
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
Those elegant arching stems.
Mhm.
really skinny, really
Yeah.
particular.
Yes, difficult to take care of. Well,
Mhm.
the orchid family is actually incredibly large and diverse. There are 28,000 species of orchid
Whoa.
in 763 genuses.
Okay.
That's a lot.
That is more than twice the number of bird species in the world, about 4 times the number of mammal species, and almost as many species as there are of bony fish.
Outstanding.
Yeah, so there are
And
lots
yet
of...
they're so temperamental, which is fascinating.
Yeah,
They're so particular.
some of them
Yeah.
certainly are. There are many beautiful and fragrant orchids. There are small and inconspicuous orchids, and there are weird orchids.
Bring on the
I'm
weird
going to talk
orchids.
about some
Tell
very
me we're
weird
talking about the
orchids.
weird ones, please.
Okay,
Awesome.
Yes.
the name of the orchid that I want to talk about today is the warty hammer orchid.
Does it look like it has warts? Is it a hammer on a stem?
This story is so much worse with the fact I shared.
Oh no! I don't know how, but I forgot about that. That's so much worse.
Oh, just wait. Okay, so
Okay.
the Latin name is Dracea livida.
Mhm.
It is not a lush, beautiful orchid with stunning petals. I sent you a picture. Look in your email.
Oh, all right.
Oh, okay. All right. Oh God.
Coming up. Oh, wow. That should probably be checked out by a doctor.
Absolutely.
You know.
How do I begin to describe this?
Well, the fun fact that you shared at the beginning of this really comes real hard into play here.
It's a little hairy.
It's kind of purpley.
And
Has like purple, dark.
there's like a purple base to it. That's almost like a
You're not gonna like what it reminds me of. The
what do
color
you got?
purple reminds me of like healing
Oh,
scabs.
jeez. I was gonna say like a bruise, but yeah.
Yeah.
You know
like
what it
so-
reminds me of?
bubbly.
It reminds me of Kaposi sarcoma, which is that skin
Ooh.
cancer that AIDS patients get.
Jeez. Gosh. Okay.
Uh,
None of these are good.
no.
I want to describe this to people though. There is a pouch, we'll just call it, like a bulb, like on this thing that the
it's
general
kind of
shape.
like an
But
oval.
the bottom, yeah,
with
like
a skirt.
an oval, and the little skirt, yeah, I was gonna say it's like a duck bill on the bottom, kind of like a little purple duck bill.
I can see
That
that.
makes it sound kind of cute, but there are little purple hairs all over it, and then there are splotches, which, yes, look like some sort of little skin cancer.
Yep.
And as you get up toward the top, it looks like a malformed raspberry on top. Or like
I could see
blackberry.
that.
Like there's these little...
It looks like little tiny black mushrooms poking up off the top almost.
This is a weird one.
You know what it
one.
reminds me of? It looks kind of like Donald Duck's head. But like
if Donald Duck had
had
some sort of horrible skin
cancer
cancer on his face.
Yeah.
and it went
there you
all
go.
up his head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right,
There you go.
Rachel,
Nailed
one
it.
guess as to what continent this very strange orchid is found in. Or
Please be
Kirk's raising his
Australia.
hand. Yes.
It's gonna be
Ding, ding, ding,
Australia.
ding, ding, ding.
Yay!
Yes.
I love how
Awesome.
that's my
Of
thing. Where is
course.
it? Australia. It's weird. Of course it's Australia.
In dry, forbidding areas of southwestern Australia.
What?
Okay.
It is
Okay.
part of a group called the hammer orchids, and all of them have some pretty weird features. So what is strange about the hammer orchids,
They
other
don't
than
look
their
like
name
hammers.
and appearance? Well, it is a...
Well, I can kind of see the hammer. I kind of get it.
Maybe.
The hammer is actually due to another feature that I'll talk about in a little bit.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. Well, this looks like a bit like a hammerhead, but okay.
These plants are sexual deceivers.
What?
They use chemicals and appearance to make their pollinator, a male wasp, think it is mating with a female of its own species, when in fact it is pollinated the orchid.
Oh, that's quite common for a lot of orchids.
Yes, it is common for a lot of orchids. It is very unfortunate for the insect.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah.
I mean,
just a little...
it's not deadly or anything, but it's
Oh, okay.
It
frustrating.
takes a lot of energy for a wasp to go through all of that. Yeah. Oh gosh.
So it is a strategy used by quite a few species, mostly orchids, in various parts of the world, but there's a particular concentration of sexual deceivers in Australia, and the hammer orchids may be the most remarkable.
Don't take that quote out of context.
What does that mean about Australia?
Yeah. So the flowers are generally fairly small and look a bit insect-like if you squint at them. And they're pollinated by finine wasps, which is a family of wasps. Only the males can fly. So normally they mate by locating a female, picking her up, and mating in flight. So when they find one of these orchids, the orchid is producing the female mating pheromone of their particular wasp species. And it's a very specific smell. So it's generally one kind of wasp to one kind of orchid.
Okay.
So the male is drawn to it by the pheromone smell, but the flower also has to look enough like a female wasp in order to trick the male.
Yeah.
Sure.
Wait, what do
Up
these
close.
wasps look like?
They're kind of dark and long. I mean, they look just sort of like a black wasp.
Okay.
Yeah. Nothing too remarkable about them in terms of their appearance. But so the male will grab the kind of the lip of the flower, the warty part, and it tries to fly off with it. But the orchid is actually hinged on its stem, or it's not a stem; it's part of the flower,
Okay.
but it looks like a stem.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so the movement of the wasp and its momentum actually will swing the flower on the stem, hence the hammer, and thwack him into the reproductive parts of the flower. Getting pollen on his back. And then he flies
The
off and
wasp
finds
is
another
the
flower and
nail.
tries to mate with it.
By the way, side note, that laugh that Rachel just did, I'm going to make that my ringtone on my phone whenever she calls.
You
And
totally
I'll add
should.
that in too.
It's a nail.
The wasp is the male.
Keep going.
Okay. I will keep going. What's even weirder biologically is that sometimes two very different looking orchids are pollinated by the same species of wasp. So
I'm
the king
crying.
spider orchid is another hammer orchid that's pollinated by the same species of wasp as the warty hammer orchid, but the two orchids look completely different. And
Wow, they're
the
really
king-
not learning.
Yeah, they're not. I guess they both look enough like a wasp to count.
Well, it must show how important those pheromones are.
Mhm.
Yes.
But that really overrides the appearance somewhat.
But speaking of the pheromones, the even weirder thing is that identical appearing members of one orchid species may use different wasp pollinators. So this is called a cryptic form. Apparently, they look like the same species, but they are producing different wasp pheromones. So they may actually be different species. It's still being investigated. So the diversity of these orchids may be much greater than you would guess just from appearance alone.
Ooh,
Very cool.
That's fun.
So these are pretty amazing. And as a bonus, the wasp pollinators are parasitoids, where the mother wasp paralyzes an underground beetle larva to lay her egg on to give them a nice fresh food source, like the great golden digger
talked
wasp
about that earlier.
that
Yeah.
Kirk talked
Callback.
about in an earlier episode.
Nice callback.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
Now, if you haven't heard that episode, you need to go back and listen now.
absolutely.
True horror
Pretty
story.
I'm pretty sure there's zombies involved and aliens. Great.
Mm-hmm.
It was a good time.
And we'll see what Kirk has for us after we come back from the break.
If you're listening to this podcast, you are at least a little strange by nature, just like us. Why not make it official? We're happy to announce the launching of our Patreon program, and it's called The Society of Strange. You can join today.
You may have noticed we've been experimenting with not having ads on the show lately, and it has been great. But while we're not doing this for the money, doing a podcast like this can get expensive.
We have web hosting fees, there's audio hosting fees, equipment fees. It all really adds up. By joining the Society of Strange, you can help us sustain the show and get some perks as well.
All Society of Strange members get one of our swanky new water bottle stickers, and at higher levels of support you can get secret bonus content and even our studio voicemail number.
Oh, yes, excellent. You can check it all out at patreon.com/strangebynature. Welcome back. This week's story that I have for you comes to us from Russia. And of course, that means I need to pronounce a name that I'm going to be terrible at pronouncing.
Yay.
Yeah, we'll get there. So this story is from back in 2009 and involves a young man named Artyom Sidorkin. I'm sure that's wrong, but I'm just plowing ahead here. At the time, he was reported to be 28 years old, and Mr. Sidorkin had been a relatively healthy young man when he suddenly noticed something had changed. He was experiencing a bit of chest pain. And
That's not a good sign.
Nope.
Yeah, I mean, there can be various reasons for that. I mean, maybe you pulled a muscle or something, you know, but it wasn't too bad at first, but it started to grow and become more concern. Eventually became quite painful, and he was coughing. And again, coughing in and of itself, not necessarily a bad thing until you start coughing blood.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's
Historically,
never a good
that's
thing.
bad.
Yeah, famously bad. So he did at that point what he should have done, which is gone to see the doctor. And he talked about this acute chest pain he was having and the coughing blood. And, you know, the doctors pretty quickly zeroed in on lung cancer as the cause, which is very tragic for, you know, for anyone, but especially for like a 28-year-old.
Yeah.
It's pretty young. They hoped they had caught it in time. Mr. Sidorkin ended up at the Udmurtian Cancer Center, where they decided to do a chest x-ray to confirm their suspicions. And sure enough, on the chest x-ray, they could see a mass in his lungs that indicated cancer. So they scheduled an operation.
Okay.
The man who did the operation was Dr. Vladimir Kamashev, deputy head surgeon at the Udmurtian Cancer Center. And there's a little quote here. He said, "We were 100% sure," said Kamashev. "We did x-rays and found what looked exactly like a tumor. I had seen hundreds before, so we decided on surgery."
So when
Once the surgery was
I
underway...
don't think this is I don't think it's cancer.
I'm gonna guess this is some horrifying parasite.
Well, it's not what you think.
Okay.
It wasn't what they thought either.
Apparently.
Once surgery was underway, they decided to biopsy the tumor to see if they needed to like remove a major portion of the lung, or what the most prudent course of action would be. Obviously, you want to take as little of your lung out of your body as possible.
Yeah.
This is Dr. Cavashem here speaking again. Pretty sure I've said his name different every single time. Sorry about that. He said, "I thought I was hallucinating.
Oh.
I asked my assistant to come have a look. Come and see this." He nodded in shock. I blinked 3 times as I was sure I was seeing things.
That's never good when they're doing an operation and they say,
Right.
Can you look at this? Am I seeing things?
Right. What they were staring at in disbelief was a young fir tree
What?
growing in Mr. Sidorkin's lungs.
No.
What?
Yeah. A young fir tree, about 2 inches long.
Was growing
they-
in his lung. I mean, if you're gonna grow anywhere as a tree, growing in a lung, you're gonna get all of the oxygen or the carbon dioxide you need. But
I suppose.
A little
there is
lacking
that.
in
little
sunlight,
less sunlight.
though.
Yeah.
Well, they
what?
believed that when he would cough, the needles would pierce the capillaries, and that was the source of the blood
Good
that he would then cough up. Mr.
gracious.
Sidorkin said it was very painful, but to be honest, I did not feel any foreign object inside me, so I'm relieved it was not cancer.
How? I mean, fair. I would also
Oh,
be
man.
relieved that I would not have had cancer, but I would also be like, I'm sorry, you had a tree growing in you. That
Hey,
tree,
kids.
I want to keep. Did he keep the tree?
Don't breathe
Well-
in seeds.
Yeah, so that's kind of what was, the conjecture. Maybe a seed or something got, inhaled into his lungs. Now, this original story ran in a Russian language newspaper in April of 2009, and it includes an X-ray showing the seedling in his lungs and a photo of his actual lung with this little 2-inch long green seedling growing inside. So I take it neither of you saw this story?
In a Russian newspaper article?
Well,
In
it got picked up by
2009?
it got picked up by a whole bunch of other news outlets, is why I ask.
No.
I just came across this week while looking for some other story ideas, and something about this story struck me as strange.
Is this for real?
Other than the fact that he had a tree growing in his lungs,
Oh, other
are there any
than that,
red
okay.
flags going off for you guys? Any red flags here?
Well,
There's-
I mean, kind of a lot. Like,
Yeah. How
wouldn't
did the tree
seed
grow?
figure out that would not be a good place to germinate?
It doesn't
Right.
have anything else, I suppose, that it would need to survive. Like sun. Sun is a really big thing for any sort of plant.
Yeah.
I think I know what you're going to be talking about.
Well, this is something that has actually happened several times to me while researching wild stories for this, and part for this the show. As part of the problem is we need to verify that they're actually true.
Right.
I don't want to be passing on like urban legends or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
This one seems pretty good. We have an X-ray showing the tree in the man's lungs. We have an actual photograph of it in his lungs. And we have stories that have been republished numerous times in newspapers around the world.
Is it all
People,
basing
however-
off of that original tale, though?
All based off that original story. And people who've looked at this with a more skeptical eye will note a few problems. First of all, the little seedling they show, having germinated and grown 2 inches long in his lung, is bright green.
Mm,
Mm-hmm.
it should be
Mm.
Yeah,
covered
now-
in blood, if anything.
Plants only produce chlorophyll, which gives them that green color in the presence of sunlight, and it is decidedly pitch black inside a human lung.
We did talk about
Have
this,
you got-
yes.
Yeah, if you've ever grown a plant in a situation with no light, well, I mean, they're not going to grow. You might get it to germinate, but it's certainly not going to have these bright, green leaves that are, absorbing sunlight. The lung tissue in question that they show as well doesn't look particularly like lung tissue to me, but then again, I'm not an actual surgeon, so I'll leave it to surgeons to be, more skeptical of that. It looked to me like a slab of meat from, the butcher or something like that.
Okay.
Now, speaking of people who have, more expertise, let's talk about the X-ray. Experts who have looked at it have noticed a couple things. First of all, the plant that you can kind of make out on the X-ray doesn't really look to be the same size or shape as the one they show that they pulled out of the lung. The needles are a different length. There's a couple other little inconsistencies. And some radiologists who they showed these radiographs to said, yeah, look at this dude's shoulder. You notice how it's not fully fused yet? This is a X-ray of an adolescent or a child. This is not an X-ray of a 28-year-old man.
Something is wrong here.
Yeah, basically nothing adds up. You also note that this story came out in April of 2009.
Yes.
Now, they don't celebrate April 1st as April Fool's Day in Russia, but they do have a tradition of their own in April that's similar to April Fool's Day, where newspapers will often run bogus stories and attempt to fool people. And let's be honest here, Russian newspapers are not exactly known for their high caliber journalism to start with. And this newspaper was essentially a tabloid. So it's very possible they could have run a story like this on any day of the year.
Having fun.
But it seems pretty clear to me this was a hoax. And it was unfortunately picked up by a lot of English-speaking newspapers, and I assume perhaps even some other language-speaking newspapers around the world as a true story. If you look it up, it's been copied to numerous websites telling fantastic stories with no attempt to try to actually figure out if this is true or not. It's really a breakdown of scientific journalism where people don't stop to actually research any story before printing it. It's sort of like the social media model, which is, oh, there's a story and I'm going to click share. And they essentially just reprinted exactly what was in this other newspaper, assuming like, well, they must have done the work. So there's not any actual like journalism going on. I've run across a few stories like this where it was either a hoax or someone more likely misinterpreted some scientific data to start with and then did a poor job of science journalism, and then other news outlets just pick up that same story instead of actually researching it and finding out if it's legit. So can a fir seed germinate in your lungs and then grow several inches long and somehow miraculously photosynthesize in your lungs in pitch darkness? No, it can't. My episode this time is sort of a warning to people to be skeptical about what you see, and when it comes to stories about nature, especially online. Nature, look, is amazing and bizarre and fantastic and strange. And that's part of why we did this podcast, was to highlight those really bizarre things and point out that you don't need to make weird stuff up. You don't need to make up trees germinating in people's lungs. There are weird enough stories out there already without having to make stuff up. So I hope to bring you a bunch of real stories, but once in a while, it's fun to debunk a story like this as well.
That was amazing. That's a really good thing to be doing. It's very important to be really cognizant and thoughtful of the news and what stories you're reading into, and making sure you're doing your research yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and know your sources, or not even research. I mean, it's one of my pet peeves when people use that word research too. It's like, it's like, oh, I read some articles. It's like, yeah, I mean, it's the idea of like really look at what the actual researchers are saying.
Right.
And there are a few good articles out there. Hats off to the CBC. They had a really nice article debunking this online. There were some journalists who did look at this and go, you know what, before I print this, I'm going to talk to some of the experts. And the experts are all like, yeah, no, this is, no, that's not a thing.
It's so important to check your sources and check the biases of the sources you're using too.
And just stop for a minute and think it through. See if it rings any alarms for you on your common sense.
Exactly. All right, well, I hope that the stories you brought this week are all true and factual, and I'm excited to hear them after the break.
Alrighty. So this week, before I get into it, what was one of your favorite nature activities to do as a child? Victoria and Kirk, what were some of your favorite activities to do?
I like just running around. We had a vacant lot across the street, and we just go play games out there and do a lot of fantasy play and just making stuff up, making up games and things like that.
I liked to go on hikes with my dad.
Aww. I like to do some of the fantasy stuff, and I always like going on walks. We had my first home, we had this big open yard right in front of us. It was technically owned by the city, but it was a big grassy lot. And one of my favorite things was to chase after flying things, anything that was flying. Butterflies, dragonflies, damselflies, you name it.
Wasps.
Maybe not the wasps. At that point in time, I was scared of the wasps.
All right.
But there's so many insects right now that are flying around. So I wanted to talk about one of my more recent favorites, the dragonfly.
Oh, all right.
So
let's get on the Odonata train.
Yeah, that's actually what I was about to say. They're on the insect order Ordinata. Odonata, not Ordinata. Woof. So that means it comes from the ancient Greek, meaning tooth, mainly because dragonfly mandibles are toothed. I say using air quotes that no one else can see.
Yeah.
They're not really toothed. They're just kind of maybe a little jagged. As of about as of 2010, there are a little over 3,000 species of dragonfly around the world. And if you haven't seen a dragonfly, what they look like is they're an insect, so they have 3 body parts, 6 legs. A dragonfly has 2 large, multifaceted eyes that take up a majority of their head, a rather short-looking thorax, which is where the legs and the wings come out. There are 2 pairs of transparent wings. When they are resting, the wings will lay flat like a plane away from the body. Damselflies, which are a similar looking species, they fold their wings along their abdomen, and they have a very long abdomen. So their bodies tend to be a little bit longer. And they're generally speaking around 2 or 3 inches long or wingspan wise. And generally they're...
And do they breathe fire?
No.
Okay, good to know.
I wish they did. That'd be cool. Maybe not. That wouldn't be.
Maybe not.
I'll think about it. Generally speaking, these are bright colors. They're metallic or they have iridescence to them. Is very common when it comes to dragonflies. There's a lot more in the tropics as they need wetlands and lakes and wet places to go through their entire life cycle. Victoria, you talked about cicadas going through that incomplete metamorphosis. Dragonflies also go through that incomplete metamorphosis. So they start their lives off in the water. They have a nymph form, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a minute. And then they eventually emerge as this adult dragonfly. So what makes dragonflies strange? Lots of things. Right. Lots of things.
All right, go for it.
The first one is that as an adult dragonfly, and most of what I'm talking about is going to be about the adult dragonfly. As an adult, they have 24,000 to 30,000 ommatidia. This is a structure that has photoreceptor cells surrounded by support cells and pigment cells, which is overlaid with a transparent cornea, which is a really fancy way to say this is the insect version of a lens of the eye. This is their version of an eye of sorts. This means that they have 24,000 to 30,000 lenses on their eyes. And because of how big their eyes are and how big their compound eyes are, it gives the dragonfly 360-degree vision. They cannot
That's why they're so hard to catch.
Amazing.
And not only do they have those 2 big compound eyes, but they have
Rachel, to be fair, they can be surprised.
They can.
If you catch them, they are surprised.
Yeah.
There you go.
They have 3 simple eyes. These simple eyes mainly detect motion and light sensitivity and shadows. So generally speaking, not only, Kirk, you mentioned that they are hard to catch. One of the reasons is because they see 200 images per second.
Oh, really high refresh rate.
They have a really high refresh rate, which for us, that's the equivalent of slow motion to us. So
Yeah, if they watched a human movie, it'd be like watching a slideshow.
exactly. We move so slow to them. It's amazing. The other thing I wanted to talk about was just how old dragonflies are. So after plants emerged in the Cambrian explosion, after vascular plants became a thing, wingless insects came about. This is about 380 million years ago. And then it kept going and progressing and evolving. And then we had about 325 million years ago came the ancestors to the dragonfly, this proto-dragonfly. And they've not changed all that much since then. But those proto-dragonflies were 30 inches across.
Oh, that's so cool.
So
30-inch dragonfly. You still
over
want
2
them to
feet.
breathe fire?
Maybe not at that size. Especially since this is mostly due to the amount of oxygen in the atmosphere.
Right.
There was about 30,
it was higher.
It was 31 to 35% of the atmosphere was oxygen versus now is about 21%.
Yeah.
So, which is what causes that size difference. That is the limiting factor for them, is being able to move oxygen through their body.
Yeah, if we had bigger dragonflies, that would also mean we could have bigger spiders. So just consider that. Now, that may be positive for some of you listeners. Some of you are like, nope.
Nope, no.
I'm out.
I will say, if they were bigger, it'd be easier for me and others to identify them.
Sure. Fair enough.
Like I said earlier, similar to cicadas, dragonflies spend most of their lives as nymphs. So the eggs, they will be deposited by the dragonflies in the water, and it's about 1,500 eggs deposited in the water. And they will hatch. They will hatch about like a week or so and become that little tiny nymph, and they will keep molting anywhere from 6 to 15 times before they metamorphose into an adult. This can take some time, obviously. Depending on the species, it can be 2 months or it can be 5 years. I know the green darner here in Minnesota and the blue darners, they stay underneath the ice, and they are one of those that stay underneath. They are one of those species that stay as a nymph in the water for 5 years, which is crazy because that means that they're living and eating as much anything that is smaller than them, including other dragonfly nymphs or damselfly nymphs, anything, until they're big enough to metamorphose. A few last things that I have to share. Some dragonflies, they're one of the most agile, most efficient flyers that are out there. They can catch 95% of the insects that they go after. They barely ever miss when they decide they're going after something.
That is unheard of in the predator world.
They are
amazing.
The most efficient predator. I mean, they've been around for 325 million years. They better be.
Stands to reason, yeah.
But not only are they really agile and efficient flyers, they can move in all 6 directions, like upwards, backwards, down, diagonal, wherever, all in that cube. And they can change directions rather suddenly as well to avoid a predator, to avoid being hit by a fly swatter or a net. Some dragonflies are even able to migrate across the sea. They're that strong of a flyer.
Wow.
Which is amazing.
Very cool.
There are birds that struggle with that. Which is just astounding. The only other thing I really wanted to talk about was how their mouth works when they are eating food. What they will do is we talked about how their name, it means toothed. Well, so what happens is their mouth is, how do I describe it? Kind of scary looking a little bit if you look at it. So they have a this mouth part that will shoot out to grab the prey. And then they have these side mandibles that will come and like help consume it and like break it apart so that way
Like
it comes
feed it in, kind of.
like feed it in.
Wow.
Which is horrifying.
Indeed.
And that's why they are in the order Odonata, is because of that toothed mouth. I mean, if I was an ancient Greek person looking at a dragonfly, that would be horrifying to me.
Awesome.
But that's what I have for you both today. Dragonflies. So
Thanks. One of my favorite animals.
Awesome.
see you all next week.
Thanks everyone for listening to today's show. Be sure to subscribe. New episodes drop every Wednesday, and we love sharing this strange world with all of our listeners. If you would be so kind as to leave us a 5-star review, that would be great. It lets other lovers of the strange discover the show. You can reach out to us on social media by searching for Strange by Nature Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. You can send us an email as well. Our address is contact@strangebynaturepodcast.com. If you want more information about the show, you can also check out our website, which is strangebynaturepodcast.com. Until next week, get outside, stay curious, and embrace the strange.
I was crying.
Outstanding.
It just gets.
Yep.
Okay, we ready? Pull yourself together.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.